And if anyone wishes to have a copy of this, please reach out to the media and or the school committee. Before we start this meeting, Coach Chappie over here would like us to please stand and rise for the playing of the national anthem from two students, Coach.
Yeah, the state and sectional swimming championships at MIT and Boston University.
Very nice, thank you. Sir, do you have those two guys here? You guys want to come up, say a few things?
You want to be the third on that agenda, you're going to have to jump the agenda.
All right, that's fine. You can wait. Tell me how to run this. All right. First on the agenda is the recognition of Hockomock Championship teams. Mr. Boucher, would you like to run with this?
Sure. We thought maybe we'd go in order of the seasons. Would that be okay?
Whatever you want to do,
So
boss.
we'll
Yep.
bring them up. We'll bring the boys soccer team up. Would that be okay? You get the front seats, coaches, or behind. Yep. Maybe just stand. How's that? Front seat. So real quick, this is the first championship in 19 years for Milford High School in the most competitive league in New England. So we feel really good about that. I can tell you from growing up in this league and playing soccer in this league that this is the best soccer team I've ever seen for boys, by far. They were just unbelievable. Great coaches. Both these guys teach here. We're lucky enough to have them on staff. So I'll let you guys take it away. But they were breathtaking to watch this year. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Awesome. Congratulations, guys.
Thank you.
What's the secret?
Wallace and de Oliveira.
Who's part of it?
That's all I wanted to ask. Anybody else?
What year are the three of you? And maybe just each share something memorable about the season. It's really quite impressive.
Well, we're all, us three, we're all class of 2019, so we're all graduating. And something memorable. Well, all right, so
Safer TV.
the night we won the league title at home against Canton. So our coach, sometimes we'd go out for like pasta dinners. Nobody could host. We'd go to like a restaurant, and he hated when we went to Sky Buffet because he thought like there's like some sort of bad mojo there or something.
Last time we did that,
There's no
last
nutritional
time
value
we
before
played, there
a
was
game
gonna be like 5 at Stoke.
Yeah.
All right.
So we went there the day before Canton. We ate there and we didn't tell them. All right, we kept it a secret. When we won it in the locker room, we let them know, and then so the curse is broken.
Do you have plans to play next year?
Wherever I go, I'll try to try out or whatever.
Great.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Honestly, the most memorable game was probably Canton. Just the way it was. It was like, it was 1-0, then 1-1, then 2-1, then 2-2, and then 3-2. to win it, it was just like the best feeling. That was just probably the most memorable.
Congratulations. Do you think you'll play in the future?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna play at UMass Dartmouth.
Congrats.
So I'm gonna have to go with them on the league title. That was just, it felt amazing to get that. Just like the scoreline is just, it just built up and the intensity just got bigger and bigger throughout the game.
Excellent. You think you'll continue with soccer?
Yeah,
against one?
playing at Bridgewater.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's exciting.
I just want to say congratulations to you guys. Just an amazing season. I heard
Thank
about
you.
it regularly from Josh when I couldn't make any of the games. But I also want to say congratulations to the coaches. I know you guys have been at it for a long time, and it's that kind of dedication and perseverance in the coaching staff that I think we're very lucky to have here. So thank you guys as well very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks, boys.
About to get some congratulations.
Thank you.
Joe, you just want to say, I think it's going to be boys and track next. So. Joe's on 2 championships.
It's nice when you can just stay up there, Joe.
We'll just have you introduce yourself. So that'll be easier. So full disclosure, we have one, our head coach is homesick. He teaches at Stacy Middle, and our other assistant coach is down at Dallas because he works with the New England Revolution. I don't know if they're opening up, but that's part of their opening swing down there, I understand. So, but this is one of our assistant coaches, Michelle Savoy. She might be very familiar to you. She is a graduate, and she competed at Division I URI and did some real great things at the college level, and of course here at Milford. So, you guys want to introduce yourselves and just quickly?
I'm Anthony Estoro. I'm a senior.
I'm Joey. I'm a senior.
I'm Zachary Brown. I'm also a senior.
Unfortunately, they're all seniors.
Yeah.
The other crew too. And these guys are seniors too. So.
Congratulations on a great season. I think there was a few records broken this past year. Can we speak to that?
I can't name them all, to be honest. I don't know if they can, to be truthful.
Yeah.
Breaking
I think if I recall, a few of you in pictures that were part of broken records. So I guess if you could at least speak to maybe one of the records that you're most proud of breaking, and whether it was a individual or a relay. I think there was a few that were.
You want to just go first with the 4x8?
All right, so the only one that I got this year was the 4x8 record, and that was pretty nice.
Oh my
It was one we wanted for like a very long time. Since like I'd say my sophomore year, we always were like, we can get it, and this year we did it, and it was rough for me because I got sick like a week before it, but we still pulled through. It was nice.
Can I interject? He only one. I mean, to be on one school record is pretty cool. So
And how,
only one is okay.
Do we know how long that record had been held before?
It
this
wasn't
year?
held for too long. I think it was a few years ago. Like, yeah, a few years ago.
Excellent.
The what? The sprint medley. Well, 1,000. That was a long time. That was probably a dozen years at least.
So,
That's a long time in track anyway. 12
so
years.
numerous records were broken this past
multiple.
season.
There is one team that's going to nationals in New York, the sprint medley, which is an 800, 200,
Zach here is
200, 400.
a part of that team going to nationals.
Joey's going to run the 800 on that team. So.
Excellent.
It's gonna be
And when is that?
next week.
Next week, yep.
We run on Friday at 1:30.
Excellent. Good luck.
Anyone that follows Twitter, Pete's Twitter,
Yeah.
definitely knows you guys. And has seen you many, many a times, so congratulations to all
Thank
of
you
you.
so much.
Hard earned.
That's amazing.
And actually, I should share, this is the first league championship in school history. Really? Which, you know, it is really special. I'll talk about bookends. You know, you have the swim team who wins them every other year, a couple years in a row, and then you have this team that's great. And then you have the soccer team that fits in the middle that competes and competes and competes and will grab a championship here. And so it's kind of a nice spectrum to have these three teams here tonight.
Sky buffet before.
Yikes! That would not be a good race.
I couldn't be prouder of these guys. Like, they impress me every time with their talent and their drive, and to come out as league champions, that I couldn't ask for anything else. It's just amazing. I've only just really begun my coaching journey, but gosh, they make me never want to leave, and I can't believe that they're all seniors. I can't believe it.
big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
When you guys were in middle school, did we have track as a sport? I mean, because you only could have been doing it for 4 years, right?
They had it was the start of like the middle school program.
Okay.
So it wasn't
Was it cross
Yeah,
country?
you guys would be the first year,
Was it?
your 8th grade year.
it was they
Was
just
it?
started.
Yeah.
No, I think it was.
No, actually, no, it's
No,
not.
it
The
was
spring
the year
track
after.
program,
It was when we were
boys
in
soccer
school.
was first 5 years ago. No, they did not, so they only
So
had.
So to me,
yeah,
it's
you're
so
right.
impressive that you've been
Yeah.
able to do that in such a short period
Yeah,
of
that's a
time,
good
so
point.
congratulations, it's exciting.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was, yeah. you
And
guys
I've
did
never
that.
broken any records, so I'd never say only if I break one.
It's amazing.
And all of you guys, the track team, the soccer team, the swim team, you guys have all made a lasting impression on the entire community. And I know a lot of young kids in Milford really look up to you guys and want to be part of the Milford program. And that's so important for us to build that sense of community. I know a lot of you work with a lot of the younger kids in town, and they really look up to you guys. So I'm excited to see the program continue to move forward, and hopefully we'll break a couple more records and win a few more championships.
Nice.
Yeah.
Good luck
Exactly.
at nationals.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations, guys.
Awesome, guys.
So let's bring up the swim guys, swim coaches. Actually, Oliver coaches on 2 staffs. He's our fitness guru in the fall with soccer, and he helps Coach Chappie in the winter. And Coach Janasco couldn't make it. She's got a new baby. So.
Very big car trouble, too.
Okay. Everybody knows Coach Chappie, but this is Riley and Gianni. Unfortunately, seniors, and I say that with the greatest amount of respect.
We'll reload.
Yes, as they always do. We'll talk about that at the end, maybe. But yeah, feel free.
So if I can just jump in, you know, I see Coach Chaplin a lot less frequently since he's retired from his full-time teaching position. But whenever I see him and I ask him about swimming, his eyes just light up. There's a certain passion that happens, and he takes such pride in, like, I think every member of the swim team, and it's really just heartwarming. And he kind of orchestrated the national anthem at the beginning of the school committee today, because he just takes such pride, and I think every swimmer that goes out for the team, and it's awesome from my perspective to see that level of dedication. So I just wanted to just throw that out there, and obviously congratulations, guys.
Yeah, I will add, so as a parent of someone who's one of your peers on the swim team, on the girls, not the boys, to Joe's point, what I've noticed is an incredible collegiality and camaraderie amongst the swimmers, and that starts with you guys as seniors and our leaders and our coaches for sure. But considering it's, I think, probably one of the few sports, if maybe the only that we have, that's really a commingled. I know there's a boys and a girls team, but everything is done in a united manner. And the way that you have led and been role models, and the fact that you're up there and playing those trumpets at swim meets, not just the nationals and or whatever those were, but like the meet after Veterans Day when you guys played, that was very touching. And when you looked around the audience and saw people really admiring what you were able to accomplish and share, not just in your swimming, but in the other things that you've achieved at Milford High School as well. And to your point, Kevin, about the coaches, what I can say is that seeing these coaches drive into Boston for these higher level meets, and you don't just get into a swim meet, you have to stand outside the arena until they allow you in, and seeing these two drive in hours early. Chappie likes a certain part of the pool where he likes the swimmers to be congregated, and in order to get that, you have to get there hours early and stand in line, and you did that multiple times so you could make sure that your guys and your girls had what they needed, and it really shined through. So thank you.
If I can jump in what Jen said, and Kevin, I am very proud of the program, and it might be the oldest one around here, swimming wise. You know, the culture of the team goes back 40 years to 1976, and it's built from there up. The fact that both teams are together, it's very important because they pull each other and they learn how to win from each other. The girls have to sit back. You know, we gave them lots of goals as things kept slipping by. We made up a few fibs along the way about things that were out there, but it made them go. And if they didn't go, they wouldn't go. One hand washes the other. because they all swim. There's 3 girls in a lane and 4 boys, and 2 boys and 4 girls. They have to pull each other to put 40 kids in the pool at one time. And then the way we run the staff, it's a whole staff thing. There's 3 of us. We identify the kids and let them know what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are. We understand what our strengths and weaknesses are. Oliver has basically been turned over as an assistant coach to run the training program. We collaborate, but he runs it. Kate is right in there with a lot of the other stuff. I seem to handle a lot of the overview stuff that involves everybody. And that's why it works. It's a culture. We've talked about it on other occasions. It's a whole culture that permeates, that dates back to the building of that facility and the maintenance of that facility by Filosa and Morcone. It adds to the pride that goes with the whole deal. But they're the whole show.
Are you guys planning to swim next year?
Yeah, I'm planning just to do swimming at Northeastern.
I'm not really planning.
How long have you guys been playing instruments?
I've been playing since 4th grade.
Yeah?
Yeah, 5th grade for me.
Very nice. Awesome job as well.
Thank you.
We have a lot of swim kids on the, that are involved in the band. Palm and I collaborate on schedules in the beginning of the year. I might be the only guy that knows when the vertical concerts are. I know when the Christmas concert is. I make sure I know when the sectional and state music tryouts are. By virtue of that, though, we work together. You know, I'm the only guy that can get a rehearsal canceled next Wednesday night to have a swim banquet.
That's no small feat. That is no small feat.
So.
Can I jump in real quick with something, because I think it's important to recognize that the level of competition for these guys to play their instruments in front of a crowd like that, and I saw it 2 or 3 times, and they were at the state level twice, that in and of itself is a performance. Then to have to run down and get ready to actually perform physically now in the water, both of those. Some people, you know, when you bring someone in to just play the national anthem, they're practicing that for weeks ahead of time, and that's their Super Bowl. And then they're done. But these guys did that multiple times and then had to run downstairs.
He was in heat too.
Riley was in the first event. Yeah,
that's hard to do. That's difficult.
That was 60 feet up on a 10-meter platform.
Yeah. As soon as he was done playing,
he had to run right down and get in the water. So it's even that more impressive, to be honest with you.
If I could just add one more thing, because I see Mr. Edwards here. I think it is your dad who might be the biggest fan of the swim team. Your dad attends every single swim meet, watches religiously, talks about you.
Basketball games too.
Soccer games. Okay. Big fan.
And just, if I can add one last thing, I just heard this at the athletic director meeting a couple of days ago, unsolicited. We were talking about who was winning championships and whatnot, and we're one of 3 expansion teams in this league, and the other 2 being Attleboro and Taunton. One of them said, we've won 2 championships since coming into the league. Now, they came in 2 years ahead of us, 2 only. That's 9 years. We've been in 7, to my knowledge. And then the other team has 0. They've not been able to win 1 league championship. And the fact that this swim organization can quadruple that, and then you add in, you know, we're averaging 3, 4, sometimes 5, sometimes 2 or 3, depending on that. It comes down to what Milford expectations, what he's talking, culture, expectations of the coaches, the program ahead of time, aunts and uncles, and people that have played here before. These guys and these gals know they have to live up to that M. It's important. You know, it's culture, it's expectations, and this town, I know I say it every chance I get in front of the microphone, is that I've been in other places, and they don't have that. They don't have 30, 40, or 50 years of pride and expectation and aunts and uncles sitting around a table at a birthday party saying, hey, not only good luck, you better get the job done next week or next month or whatever. And I think that's a special thing. So these guys are doing pretty good. The gals are doing pretty good too.
Absolutely. And those, Jim,
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up, echoing everything that you said, and again, thank you to the coaching staff. It's obviously, there's a lot of legacy there, but what I wanted to really just wrap up with is that you see, not just you guys whom I've known for quite a long time, and I'm always been super impressed with, but you just see such a round student profile when you guys come in, just involved in so many things. It's just remarkable to see you guys do multiple sports, music, arts, theater, everything. It's not just, the one thing I love to see about the district is that you guys are involved. And I think at the end of the day, that's what matters most, whether it's Palm that comes in with the music program or you guys that come in. It's just a culture, and that's the thing I think that is the most important. And that's as Joe said, you talk about legacy, that's the legacy. I mean, whether we're watching you swim or whether we're watching you play horn, it's remarkable to watch both. And the thing that impresses me is that there's multiple people like you. So it's a great legacy you guys are leaving behind. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Coach.
You guys have homework. Oh, right, sorry.
Awesome,
Come on,
Joe.
lady.
Awesome. All right, next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. I'm sure everyone had the chance to review the minutes.
No.
A motion to approve the minutes. Motion by Jim, seconded by Joe. All in favor?
I should probably abstain because I came in at the very end of that meeting. I don't know, what do you think, Kevin? I came in at 8:40. I feel like I should
Yeah, why don't you just abstain from it?
for
That's
the minutes, yeah.
Good question. Next thing on the agenda, announcements, correspondence, and distributions. Chris?
Announcement. Just letting everybody know that on Wednesday, March 13th, at the Stacy Middle School Auditorium from 7 to 9, the Milford Special Education Parent Advisory Council has invited Sarah Ward to come in, and she is kind of a guru on executive functioning. So she will teach children to manage their time, space, and materials while keeping their emotions in check. She will teach 2 powerful strategies to help your children develop independent executive functioning skills. So, I know it's put on by the Special Education Advisory Council, but it's certainly open to everybody within the district, whether you're a staff member or a parent. So certainly looking forward to this. It kind of piggybacks to Jessica Minahan that we had last year as our keynote speaker. So this will be this year's keynote speaker. So again, please spread the word for March 13th, 7 p.m. at Stacy Middle School.
And Sarah Ward's kind of become a national name, and she's very, very well known, and she puts on a phenomenal presentation. So I recommend any parent who has any interest or any concern in this area, it's well worth your time to attend.
Where was that again, Chris?
It's at Stacy Middle School at the in their auditorium.
Yeah, if I could just make a comment on his announcement. I just, that's really a feather in the cap, I think, of CPAC, or is that what we call it here?
CPAC, yep.
You're a relatively new organization.
Yes.
For Milford. I mean, I think it's only been in existence for about a year.
Yeah, this is year number 2.
Okay.
So certainly it had been an organization in the past. It fell apart, disbanded a little bit, and then through Lucy, and it has come back together. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that work is really critical. It's really important, and to bring in speakers with that level, that capacity that Kevin's talking about, and between Jessica Minahan and Sarah Ward, I think that's really incredible that that group is organized to bring in that level of speaker and support for our parents.
Thank you.
It's great.
Thank you.
And that's something that any family or student can benefit from.
100%.
Right? It's not just special ed.
Yeah, it is. Again, that's to be very clear. It is put on by the Special Education Parent Advisory Council, but it's open to everybody. And I think when you're looking at how to manage homework and that skill set and materials, and really again keeping emotions in check, it's benefit to anybody out there.
And if I could jump in, Chris, a lot of the adults even walk away with a couple good
Right,
ideas about how to manage
right.
their own kind of day-to-day operation.
Anybody else? You got anything?
Yes. So we have in March 3 long-range education facilities plan presentation, and this is a presentation of the draft plan, and we'll be looking for kind of feedback and questions from the community. Our first event is March 4th at 7 p.m. at the Milford High School auditorium. The second event is March 11th at 10:30 a.m. at the Milford Senior Center, and the third presentation and final presentation of the month is March 19th, which is taking place at 41 Pine Street. And the 6:30 presentation is going to be presented in Spanish, and the 7:30 presentation in Portuguese. So I encourage you to attend one or all of these sessions, ask questions. We'll be doing a presentation that'll be probably approximately 45 minutes, and leave 15 minutes to a half an hour for questions.
Thank you, sir.
Can I ask a clarifying question? On the 19th, is the presentation being made in the native language, Portuguese and Spanish, or is it being given in English and translated along the way?
In the native language. So,
okay, so if you're an English
myself,
speaker, you would not want to go English only, you wouldn't want to go on the 19th?
correct.
Okay.
Correct, because it's going to be
Okay.
done in Spanish and Portuguese just
Okay.
to kind of meet the needs of some of our community
Okay.
members who are native speakers.
Okay.
But we'll have administrators there who will answer questions from a translated perspective, but the actual presentation will be done
Okay.
in Spanish and Portuguese.
Thank you.
It's a great question.
Next on the agenda is invitation to speak. Patiently waiting.
Yeah.
How are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
What do you got?
Okay, we're from Student Nation. So I'm Grace, by the way. Grace Ruzio.
I'm Charlotte. Let's go.
So basically winter sports just ended. Pretty good seasons, and spring sports start on March 18th, so that's in about like 2.5 weeks.
Our exchange program just took place these past 2 weeks, and we had students go to Italy and Spain, and I know that everyone on the trip had a really good time. So.
Yeah, I think over April break, the music department is going to Disney, so a lot of kids are very excited about that. I know that. What else do we got? Oh, the play is coming up, Year in Town. That's March 15th, right? 16th and 17th. So that's out there.
And also, April 5th is the prom for the junior class, and that also happens to be our half day and when we're filming the lip dub.
And then April 26th, the senior class, so for us, we're putting on a talent show. So it's going to be kids for the high school, but it's open to the community. Anybody can come, help us out, get some more money for our events. So, yeah.
And when's that going to be?
April 26th.
April 26th.
Yes. Yeah. That's pretty much it.
You guys got any
Much.
questions for these guys? Good? No? Thank you, guys.
Would you mind sharing some of your college goals coming up?
So I'm not quite sure where I want to go, but I applied to 8 colleges, heard back from 7 so far. I want to go into education and specialize in special education or speech pathology or something along that line. So yeah, we'll
You
see.
did early action?
Yeah.
So call us in 4 years.
Yeah, I will.
And for me, I applied to like 5 and I got into them, but it was between the University of New Hampshire and Assumption College. And about 2 weeks ago, finally put down my deposit, and I'm going to Assumption for business management.
Sorry, you said you didn't pick one yet?
I'm very indecisive.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll know more about that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Alright, next on the agenda is class size discussion. Nick, Sherry, how are you guys?
Hey guys.
This is the earliest we've ever Don't get used to it.
I can move you down.
Right.
Well, we'd like to first take the time to thank you for allowing us to speak with you today. For those that don't know, I think everyone does, but I'm Sherry Peterson, English teacher at Stacy and the Milford Teachers Association Vice President. And
I'm Nick Molinari, the association president. Now, all of you, I think, were here the last time we bargained, correct? The last contract?
no, I don't think so.
You don't do?
No.
Oh, okay, right. So do you want to explain the language that's behind this, Sherry?
Absolutely. So our previous contract before the current one
addressed class size issues, and it simply said that the school committee's goal would be to keep class sizes, average class sizes, at 24 or below. And we thought, very admirable goal, and we reached it every year. But we also knew that just looking at average class size wasn't conveying what was actually going on in our classes. I mean, it did work, yes, our class sizes were averaging 24, but there were some places where the opportunity to address class size issues were being lost because we weren't all aware of how big some of the classes were getting. So our current contract, we added that we would look at class size from the whole school district. Every single class, we would get a report, both the union and you guys would receive a report, and we would come and discuss it with you guys. So that's why we're here tonight. I think you all received the report on class sizes. So for Nick and I, we agree that for the most part, Milford's doing a very good job with class sizes. There are very few issues. Most classes are under 24. There's a lot of classes that are at 20, which is a really, really nice class size for teachers, most teachers. However, we do think we wanted to discuss a couple of issues, mostly with the high school and with Stacy. Do you want to address the high school
Sure,
first?
yeah, basically what I did was I went through the main high school, well, the document for all of the schools, and I just went through with a highlighter, everything over that 24 mark to see where the outliers were. And there were a couple here and there. Some of them are definitely by design, so you'll see a high number, but the department has it set up that way because of the way they run the program. So for instance, music classes, we want to run those first period because we share faculty, so they've got a higher number. It was deliberately programmed to be that way. Other classes, that's not necessarily the case. The biggest concerns I had were two departments in particular. So like as you flip through, you see a couple highlights, and then when you get to the social studies department, virtually all of their classes are significantly over the mark. And likewise, the science department, virtually all of those are over the mark. Now, I know there are plans in terms of the budget to try to alleviate these in different ways, but those definitely pop out when you look through this document and just go through the basic numbers like I did. Sometimes the ones that are most concerning, I think, are when you get to really high numbers for a CP level course in either of those disciplines, because we don't have small group. Is that what it's called? Yeah, small group classes. So, for example, a CP class in world studies, you could have, say, 26 kids, but so one of the examples I have here, 8 of them are on IEPs, which means each of those has an individual education plan that you have to accommodate. 8 of them are ELLs, meaning they're learning the language, or currently learning the language, and then 6 of those are former English learners. They're not perfectly proficient, but they're all kids with a lot of needs, and it's tough to meet all of those needs, especially when they're in the same group. So those are the major concerns with class size, especially in those key areas where it's a real, it's a class that demands a lot from the teacher. So the lower we can get those numbers, the better. And certainly social studies and science at the high school would be the 2 areas that need the most attention. Sherry looked closer at Stacy Middle School.
Yeah, so at Stacy Middle School, first of all, I mean, one of the problems with Stacy is the current 8th graders, that's the class of 2023, is the largest class we've ever had move through the district. It's a very, very large class. But most of the classes that we looked at that we said were an issue were the specialist. There's quite a few STEAM classes that are actually into the 30s. There's a couple of health classes that are into the 30s. There's some art classes that are into the 30s. And then there's some science classes. And, you know, one of the issues with having those specialist classes be so large is that most of them involve a lot of materials. And so you need a bigger desk, you need more room, the kids need to be standing up, moving around, manipulating these materials, and it gets very, very crowded. And the same is in science classes. Obviously, science classes both at the high school and middle school You will do a lot of labs, which require students to be moving around and manipulating materials. And we think that we might have to think outside of the box. It's not as easy as just hiring more teachers. There's space issues where you can't have a science classroom and an English room. You know, you have to have specific desks, you have to have sinks, you have to have all those things, and we just don't have extra science rooms. So we might have to kind of go outside the box to address some of the issues at Stacy and of course at the high school. But since we've put this into the contract this year, we've definitely seen an improvement in how the class sizes are addressed. I know at Stacy, Mrs. Angelini put a new math class in that addressed the huge honors classes at the 8th grade level. And we have been talking a lot more about it with the principals, and the result has been positive. So.
But to end on a really positive note, the elementary schools are in great shape. They're just looking through Woodland right now, only 3 classes were over that 24 mark, and that's great.
So if I can make 3 comments before you jump to the committee.
Sure.
You know, I think this is one of the many times where I feel like the school committee, the school administration, and the union are all have the same goals in mind. We want you know manageable class sizes. We want actually smaller class sizes, ideally.
Yeah.
But there's 3 factors that are kind of driving some of that. One Sherry mentioned was the 8th grade is just the largest class I think in the history of the Milford Public Schools, and there's really not a whole lot of accounting for that other than it just creates an issue each year. And then the 7th grade is big, but not quite as big. But there's also some issues there because it's a large class. And then after that, the classes become much more, kind of a typical Milford-sized class.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing we have going on, which I don't know if it's a one-year aberration or it's something that's going to be the beginning of a trend, is our numbers are up about. And I didn't get a chance to check this afternoon because I was in an event, but we're probably up somewhere between 125 and 175 students net. And typically we usually fluctuate about 50 students one way or the other. And usually our churn in versus our churn out is pretty, like it keeps us at kind of in a consistent number. But this year we've had to make, I think, 2 adjustments on the fly, which we haven't had to do since I've been, whether assistant superintendent or a superintendent, where we made a shift at the high school to move some classes around just because we've had so many just new students entering. And then we made a shift at the middle school with, I believe, some math classes.
Yeah, I think we had already exceeded last year's numbers of intakes by October.
Correct.
At high school, so.
And typically, even if we do that, we have a number of students just leaving the district for a variety of reasons. And this year, we just don't have that same churn. And that's when issues arise where you just and Sherry mentioned a great thing. It's not as simple as hey, add 4 teachers to Stacy, because there's a number of kind of constraints around, content and just purely space issues. And the schedule presents some issues at Stacy as well. So, I think it's a good conversation to consistently have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to the principals, I'm talking to Jen Norgini, and Craig and I are having conversations. I'm having conversations with the 2 of you regularly about it because we're really monitoring it. And we're probably coming to about the end of, because we generally get a big jump of students about this time of year. Yeah. And we're kind of hitting the end of that. So it'll be interesting to see if the numbers kind of continue to grow or it starts to dip a little bit, because maybe by the end of the year we'll go back to kind of our typical number. It's hard to say though. It's hard to say if this is the start of a trend or just an unusual year for, I'm sure a variety of factors. So.
Yeah, just to echo Kevin, I mean, when we were doing negotiations or bargaining with this was kind of a heated topic, and we talked about it for a long time. I think we had to come back to it, afterwards too.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows that we're on board with you guys. I mean, it was a serious situation. Some of the teachers are really, bothered by it. So I'm glad that we're coming to this and we're paying attention to it and focusing on it and having this kind of a conversation.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing that came out of that too. I mean, everything came out, but I mean, that was a good one that I think we all agreed on.
Mm-hmm.
And class sizes are obvious because you can just look in the room and there's this many kids in there.
Yeah, right.
There's no debating it.
And you touched it at the beginning. Historically, we've just looked at averages, and averages don't tell the whole story. So you really need to drill down into the data to see where the outliers are and where the areas for improvement are. So, it's important to continue to have these conversations. And obviously, you touched on the 7th grade and 8th grade class, and you know, by looking at this data, I would expect that we can plan for the upcoming year, right? So we know there's going to be this influx of students coming into the high school. So what are we doing from the high school perspective to prepare teachers and administrators for that influx of students, right? So I know we're in front of that, and we're having conversations on how we're going to address that.
Yeah, so I think some of the requests that Principal Hotland has made are looking at solving, I think, some short-term issues because of the big classes coming up, but also more longer-term issues. Like science has, I think, been over-enrolled, as well as history, kind of historically. And again, we're not able to solve every issue in a one-year swing, but I think, over the course of a couple of years, we'll be addressing these things.
And it also factors into the decision around school choice in, right? So, for example, this year with 8th grade, we probably
The class was closed even before it started.
Right, and we'll probably have to take
Do
that
the
into
same thing for
consideration
freshmen
next
next year.
year as we go into high school, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I just had one, sorry,
No, go ahead, Jen.
On the list, and Sherry, you might know this, so for example, I'm looking at a lot of the 8th grade science classes where there are 2 teachers listed. So would that be a co-taught class where there are always 2 teachers in the classroom? So for example, this one is Brian Rizzuti and Rachel Usher.
That should be, I would think.
So that class, Brian Rizzuti is a special ed teacher, so you've
Okay.
got kids on IEPs in that class.
Okay.
And it would be co-taught, but the kids would all still be in the same room, mostly on the
Right.
in a usual situation.
But for the most part in that class, we would have a second adult in there.
Yes.
Obviously
Mhm.
for IEP purposes, but.
Yep.
But not necessarily a teacher, right? So sometimes it might be a TA,
Sometimes it might be a TA.
and teacher would be
Okay.
somewhere else.
Craig, are TAs listed on here, though, on this
No.
one?
No,
they
but
aren't.
the teacher would be listed.
Mhm.
But
Yeah.
the teacher's also listed
Yeah.
on several other classes.
Okay,
So if the teacher's not in there on that particular day, the TA would be in there.
okay,
But the
Mhm.
teacher is responsible for the students.
okay. And I realize that does not minimize a 28 or a 29, but it
Oh, no,
is
no. I mean, it's a
reassuring
great
to know
question,
that there is
yes.
another
Yeah,
professional
Mhm.
in there.
But it
So-
also suggests that there's more higher need students in that room too.
Absolutely,
And
yes,
Yeah.
it's
yes.
can be very difficult to manage a class that has such large numbers with
Yeah.
the higher needs students.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons that we always look at class size is because the data suggests that the gaps between your average student and your IEPs, the achievement gaps, can be closed by working on the class sizes and getting them smaller. There's overwhelming data that suggests that. I think it's really important.
Yeah, well, just as a teacher, you're able to give more feedback and more
Absolutely.
individualized attention,
Absolutely.
5 classes of 25 is that many more papers to grade as opposed to 5 classes of 20. Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
But I guess to your point, I also noticed that a teacher may have, in this, I noticed that a particular science teacher had 3 classes that might have been 24, 25, and 28, but then also had a class of 14 and a class of 17. So I guess, like we spoke about before, if you average it out, it would appear as if the class average is 22, 23.
Okay.
So I guess some of the conversation has to go with how can we even out those numbers a little bit?
So that's tricky at the high school level.
It's tricky at Stacy too.
Stacy too, but because there's thousands and thousands of variables
Yeah.
and choices that kind of play into it, and you just inevitably end up with unbalanced
Yeah.
classes because somebody's taking there's a group of kids that take an AP course, it just unbalances because that AP course is only offered in one block. And it just naturally you're going to see. We try to even it out as much as possible, but it just
That's the number one
becomes-
thing they ask the guidance department. So my
Yeah.
wife is always like, I can't do it, it's impossible.
That's-
This is the way it works out.
You never hear about that, do you?
Yeah, right.
And it is true at Stacy too, because you have in the 8th grade some honors classes, and so those are only offered at a specific time, and so you will end up, even I have it where I have one class that's very small and the other classes are larger, and I don't think there's any way to address that other than getting rid of the honors classes, which I don't think is ever going to be something we would want to do. So.
And that drove the math adjustment that we made this year
It
because
did.
the enrollment was different than what we typically expect.
Different,
And,
yeah.
and the numbers were higher too, so it was a few different variables kind of at play there.
So.
Does the schedule that Josh is proposing moving forward, does that help address some of the issues, or?
No, because it's really more a case of It's driven by a number of factors, but like singleton courses, AP courses. Nick was talking about the music, courses that are offered. Like a lot of that, where something's offered in a particular period, and you have to get your music students in there, your AP, the students who choose to take an AP class or an upper level math class or like a hotel and hospitality management class, like kind of more drives the schedule than anything else. So that's not going to impact like the choices that happen, and it's just not going to equalize it.
They approved it today. He says
Yeah, I heard that. So that's fantastic.
Oh,
Great.
good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for approving it. It seemed like a lot easier.
Yeah, good margin too, about 70%.
Yeah, which that's a great.
Awesome.
I think it's got a lot of potential benefits.
This is a really productive way to have the conversation. I like the direction that it's going. I know we're agreed that we'll review it twice a year. How often are you guys doing this? Perhaps it sounds more.
That's when I see it, just twice a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's just curious.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's even really working, given that we addressed the mask issue before it even got to this. So I love the fact that, the
So
administration
Meg,
is
we're
also
watching
paying
it all the
attention.
time
Yeah.
because, like I said, in January we added like 60 new students across the district, and that just has an impact
Absolutely.
on, especially if they're concentrated in one school or a couple grade levels.
Yep.
It can kind of throw everything off. So we're having conversations, I want to say on a monthly or weekly basis this year, and I think it's just because we're just seeing our numbers growing as opposed to
Sure.
kind of staying relatively static with some bumps and ups and downs, which is more typical.
It's just affirming to hear that it's working and that we're addressing it, and we'd love to see it all be addressed, but appreciate that that's a challenge. So thank you.
Meg, in the past, and I guess I'm asking you guys, I know that when numbers got higher, principals were talking to teachers and saying, hey, this class is getting higher, and kind of talked it through with the teacher. Do you think, is that still happening, do you know?
What do you mean talking?
So if there was a higher number in a history class, I can't remember the name of the classes in particular, but like you said before, some of them were by design. I had thought that we had said that principals were talking with teachers and kind of explaining why things had to be the way they were, and then trying to alleviate some of that with smaller class sizes in other sections.
Yeah.
Like prior to the start of the school year, anyways.
Yeah, I mean, I know in the past sometimes they would prioritize keeping the CP level courses as low as possible, and that might mean that your honors courses are going to be a little bit bigger. So you could have, you'll cut down on a section of an honors class, so those naturally will get bigger and make that teacher teach an additional CP to spread those out a bit. So yeah, those things happen all the time.
Right. So
That's great.
And I know it's Stacy, some of it, because we have certain segment of the population that can't be in, say, my 8th grade English class because they're just learning the language, but by law they're required to be in a regular math class, integrated into that math class. So your math classes are obviously going to be higher than my English classes because we're on teams.
yeah.
So the math teacher on my team has many more kids, maybe 20 more kids than I have this year. And there's no real way to even that out unless we did some big change, like getting rid of teams at the middle school, which I also don't think we're planning on doing or even talking about doing. So, teachers are aware that there are things that are causing this. It's not like it's something you guys are attempting to do to us to make our jobs harder, I mean, we're like Kevin said in the beginning, we're all on the same page. We all want to see the class sizes smaller. And it's good for everyone.
I think what's also telling to me is what's not on these pages in terms of, especially at the high school, kids that are trying to get in classes that can't, and so that we're paying attention to that. Like these kids wanted to take a science and they couldn't. That's a need that we need to be addressing.
That's another issue with the science department.
But that's important to me, Kevin, that that's also on the radar, because I think it wouldn't necessarily show up in this, but it's also an issue.
And we watch that too, because we obviously want kids to get into the classes that they choose to get into, or they're interested in getting into.
Yeah, Chris. Kind of piggybacking on what Jen had said, and Sherry, you alluded to, just the CP class, and you've got a mix of the IEP students and the EL students, I guess, Nick, when you started talking to that. Can you elaborate, I guess, a little bit more on those dynamics and,
Well,
I guess, is it efficient within that class, having that many kids, but you also have a lot of kids that require a lot of probably direct teaching and some
Yeah, I
one-on-one.
mean, that's the most difficult
Yeah.
class you can get, in my opinion. Especially when you have the mix. Because if you're dealing one part of the population with IEPs, and so that's a lot of work. You have to do individualized plans and make different accommodations. So if you're going to give a test, well, now you've got 8 kids in that room that you might have to tweak that test a different way for
Right,
each of
yep,
those.
different
depending on the
accommodations, yeah.
circumstances. So that's about 30 or 40% of the class you have to do that for. But then you've got another whole group, an equally large portion that speaks very limited English.
Mhm.
So you're trying to teach both of these groups at once, and yeah, that's tough.
Right, and I'm assuming that class model, it's a single teacher, potentially a TA to
So for
service
the
your.
example, the ones I have
Yeah.
here, and I just printed off for the history department. Only one of them is co-taught out of 12, and they're all over 24. So those are very difficult classes.
So we've
and that's
got
why,
a high
yeah,
class
and I
count
don't have that for the science
with a-
department. I don't
yeah.
know what that
So,
number is.
High class count, high need population within
Yeah.
that class.
Yeah.
So my next question is, are we doing a good service to these students, or do we need more, that we need to push some more initiatives? And I think I'd
Yeah,
like-
I mean,
I'd
that's
like
an
to
area
hear
I
that.
would
And
definitely
so,
prioritize.
you know,
You know what I mean?
as a school committee member, as a parent,
Mhm.
both, I think that, starting to drill down into these, into the classes of need, we look at the honors, we look at, I think the kids in the honors class have a tendency, or not have a tendency, they can fly on their own. But it's the CP classes, when we have 24 kids and we're reaching the limits, and we have kids on IEPs and kids on EL, do we need more help in these classes? And I think we gotta make sure that we're providing our services right, and are the initiatives in our current budget going to support the union? I guess, can we speak to that now?
I would say for social, I think it's a longer conversation, and I think I would love to come with you with more
Yeah.
data.
Yeah.
I'd say let's do a follow-up on that one.
Okay.
I think it's a great question.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is second reading of the field trip guidelines and protocol. I'm sure everyone's had the chance to read these, and Megan, there hasn't been any changes or
Correct.
nothing to it since we read it, right? Can I get a motion to accept the new guidelines and protocols for field trips? Motion by Jim, second by Chris. All in favor? Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, report of the superintendent of schools, long-range education facilities plan.
All right, we've got 2 updates for the committee this evening. If you want to refer to the packet, I sent it to you today as a PDF, but there's also a hard copy here. I want to do 2 things tonight. One is kind of walk through kind of the anticipated timeline, and 2, kind of just give you kind of a greater understanding, and a lot of the information in the packet gives you an understanding of kind of the building process. So earlier I reported that we're going to be doing 3 sessions where we're going to be getting feedback from the community. We're also going to set up something with Town Hall as well. I'm anticipating probably in early April after we do the 3 sessions with the community. So we can look at things like timeline, the community's kind of ability to absorb kind of a major project, and what that would look like in terms of time, and then kind of talk about process. So why don't we walk through the packet next, and I'm gonna go very quickly through each thing, but I'm happy to kind of answer any questions you have on any aspect of it to the best of my ability. And Kathy's done some kind of programs with the MSBA as well, so feel free to jump in if I start to struggle or stammer with it, because it's a lot of information. The first thing is the statement of interest, which have an open period each year, which is right about this time of the year. And I think the data is important for the committee to see. So if you look at the first table, it's got kind of the orange headers. There's basically two programs. There's the core program, which is like the new buildings or kind of, major renovations. And then there's the accelerated repair program. And I think if you look at our long-range educational facilities plan, our program is going to fall under the core program, which is kind of a new building or a significant renovation. And if you look at the numbers from 2013 to 2018, the high water mark was 2013 when 201 school districts, or they could be multiple buildings within the same district, but 201 projects were proposed, and only 13 were invited to kind of move forward in the process, which is about a 5 or 6% number. If you look at 2018, the number is 130 and about 12, so it jumps up to about 10%, and it varies year to year, and some of it's based on the funding that the MSBA has available. One of the challenges of the MSBA process now is construction prices are escalating, and the pile of money that the MSBA has isn't escalating in the same proportion. So you're going to see a relatively low there's going to be a low percentage of acceptance rates, and sometimes it takes a district, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and there's a number of factors that that influence that, and that's things like what's the age of the roof, what's the age of the major systems, some of the key components in the building. Have you kept up on maintenance? What's the scope of your proposal? Does it line up with district kind of long range plans for programming? Those kinds of things all kind of factor in. So let's say like in one scenario, if we were to submit a statement of interest during the next kind of round, you can see kind of the initial success rate. Now it's possible because of the age of the roof and the age of the systems in the building that we'd be a priority project. But it's also possible that they're going to fund 15 projects and 35 of them have similar kind of, similar kind of makeups to Milford High School, where the ages are similar. They could maybe go with our proposal or invite us forward, or maybe go with a different one, and we'd have to resubmit the following year. So I just want to make sure that everybody's aware of kind of the numbers game that's out there, and I think one of the issues, and I've talked to a few experts in the field over the last couple months, and they're saying that the problematic piece of this is that, like, even a project like Woodland that was $65 million when we started the project a few years ago would probably be $100+ million project today. And so if you're looking at a high school project, which tends to be double or triple what an elementary would cost, you can kind of think of the escalation of numbers, and we're still, everybody in the state is still grabbing from one pie. All right, so that just gives you just some data, just a little piece of it. The second page is just the overview of the statement of interest process. And I think as we kind of embark on this journey, we really have to, I think we're going to engage with some consultants, because there's a lot of key language that, the department or the MSBA is looking for that really kind of drives, I think, successful proposals. And I think we're going to bring some help to the table to make sure that we're putting our best foot forward. And whether it takes us, it's the first bite at the apple, the second or third bite at the apple, that we're putting the best product forward in terms of a proposal. And it's pretty extensive. There's actually a form online, and it's pretty detailed what you have to kind of provide. And the good news is we've done a fair amount of the legwork. Or we'll have a fair amount of the legwork done by the end of this year, because the facility study is very helpful, because it gives us a sense of like where all the the major systems stand in terms of like what are the issues at each building, and the long range education plan is going to give the MSBA a sense of where we're going as a district and a community in terms of how we're prioritizing projects, how we're connecting facilities to program, and what our kind of long-range plan is beyond even the initial project we're presenting. And this requires a vote of both the Board of Selectmen and the school committee to kind of move it forward and basically say the community is behind this kind of a program. And the next piece is just how the local vote works and, you know, kind of that process. So it's more, there's kind of there's a script in terms of how you have to kind of present it. And again, this is really more just for your information. The next sheet I want to kind of direct you to is the MSBA core program process overview. And I think I've shared this document with you before. And each phase of this is kind of put into detail at the, on the MSBA website. So if you have interest in kind of, you know, poking around there, and you can even look at, each year you can kind of see which projects were approved, and kind of, you can kind of look at the proposal, which is one of the things we'll do as part of the process of writing the proposal. You know, whether we're proposing kind of the combined, you know, middle school, high school complex option, or, you know, kind of moving forward with kind of a more traditional route. And we may just say we're going to look at both as part of a feasibility study to see, you know, if whether the high school grounds that we're on right now could support a, you know, project like that, you know, or there's some other site in town that could support a project like that. So this is kind of each step of the process. I just want to have you guys aware of what that looks like. And, you know, once you hit that eligibility period, if you go to the next section, which is called Module 1 eligibility period, there's a really tight timeline there. So once the MSBA has approved your statement of interest and they ask you to move forward, then there becomes, I think it's a 270-day period where you have to meet a number of benchmarks around votes and expectations. And you have to kind of meet all these. So part of the statement of interest process too is to kind of be ready to, like, say we hypothetically put in for next year, we're accepted, it goes to a vote, or they accept us forward, then we have to kind of hit this kind of 270-day process. So we have to make sure that we're lined up for that, even in year one.
Kevin, could you just explain, where does the feasibility study fall in that process?
So,
it has to be. I'm not clear on that.
So I think this is the, and again.
Doesn't it have to be post-feasibility study? Or no? It has to be done within 270 days as well?
So, yeah, so the vote I think is for the, and again, I'm digging into all this stuff kind of as we're going, but my understanding is you're invited in, you go through this process, you do your vote for the feasibility study, the feasibility study goes through.
See, I think that's not true. Like, if you look at page 1 of the process overview, you submit the SOI, and then you see approval at the end of that first row. And then the second phase is the feasibility study, which certainly also requires approval. I just think we need a timeline for Milford that includes the date.
So part of it is going to be whether we go next year or the year after. And so what I want to get a sense of this spring is it going to be, are we going to be putting a statement of interest in the spring? And if we are, then I'm going to put a detailed timeline together, like saying, hey, we're starting, you know, the eligibility period is like March and April of next year. This is what we're going to have to do over the next 2 years to kind of get the project rolling. If we're looking at dates right now, so that next year will be spring of 20. If we're looking spring of 21, that's going to be a very different timeline and process. The other piece that's going to drive it, though, is that we might have to submit the statement of interest multiple times. And that's going to really drive like the rest of the timeline. And the rest of the timeline is pretty clear once you're invited in.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
So even if I'm not completely clear on like the actual, you know, steps in the process, but like the statement of interest, like being accepted and you know, being invited to move on, drives the rest of the process.
Absolutely. I just think it'd be helpful to have a timeline that outlines that.
Yeah,
and then we can update the year as needed, but
Yeah.
I think we should be driving to something like.
Yeah. So I think the initial piece is, and I think the initial piece is like just getting that statement of interest accepted, and once that's accepted, then everything else kind of falls into play.
But there's a lot of work between here and there.
Yeah, absolutely. So the statement of interest, really, the key piece is like getting the statement of interest together. Because the feasibility study is done by like an outside organization. Like we're not conducting our own feasibility study on. So it's basically the timeline is around like hiring. What's the group that you hire for the feasibility study? There's an acronym for that. But so basically there's a timeline for, so you got to approve the feasibility study at town meeting. Or through a vote. And then you hire, there's a process for hiring somebody to do the feasibility study, and the MSBA has clear guidelines for that. Once the feasibility study is complete, you're basically, you know, if you're in the core program, it's either you're gonna do a new building, you're gonna do a renovation, you know, major renovation, are generally the two options. And for us, we'd probably also be asking the question, you know, can the, you know, the high school, you know, grounds, you know, take on like a middle high school complex, looking at like, you know, traffic patterns, numbers, you know, all those things.
But it's the feasibility study that will determine that.
Correct.
And before we can get to the feasibility study, we have to do the SOI.
We have to get the statement of interest accepted.
And
Correct.
before we get the statement of interest, we gotta make sure that we're talking with all of our town officials, correct?
Correct.
So I guess my question is, where are we in that process?
So-
'Cause a year ago, we had
so-
the NESDAQ report, hold on. A
Okay.
year ago, we had the NESDAQ report. On October 3rd was our last long-range education subcommittee. You presented to us on the 25th.
Yep.
And now we're 4 months into it. In that presentation, you also said you were gonna meet with the Board of Selectmen and other town groups.
Yep.
So have you met with the Board of Selectmen? Have you met with FinCom or had discussions with FinCom? So again, right now, we gotta just drive to the SOI. Beyond that,
Yeah,
it drives
that's-
itself, so.
Exactly.
Let's,
So
let's
right now,
put
yeah, so
together
let
an
me,
SOI.
so let me explain kind of where we are with that
Yeah.
process. So, part of that process before we can have an SOI is to have the long-range educational facilities plan complete.
Right.
So, the 3 meetings we're having in March are the 3 community meetings.
Right.
Once we get that feedback, we're gonna meet with the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom, and I'm gonna be inviting those folks to attend those presentations as well.
Sure.
So they're kind of coming in with an understanding, and we're gonna get a sense of, you know, what's a reasonable timeline to kind of move forward on.
Mm-hmm.
Could we submit it, like, so, is our best case scenario their worst case scenario? So if we submit an SOI next year, does it line up with the town's ability to pay?
I guess though, why do we have to meet with the town, or the community before meeting with the selectmen or FinCom? Sounds like FinCom's gonna really drive part of this, because whether or not they feel, you know, there's other expenditures through this town, you know, one being
Yeah, we got the water company purchase,
So
yep.
FinCom's really gonna know, and I think that we saw when we met with FinCom subcommittee, there was a lot of questions that they had, so we're gonna go to the town with some ideas, but in parallel, shouldn't we be talking with FinCom? Shouldn't the Board of Selectmen know what our intentions are? We've got a presentation that you're gonna give. Again, I'm leery of the timeline, and the NESDAQ report came out a year ago. For the last 4 months, have we been working on anything? What is there to show over the last 4 months since the presentation to this committee?
Yeah, really, it's been a function of time. I think initially I was looking at February to do the presentations,
Yeah.
and it's just free nights to do presentations to the community. I mean, it really just comes down to that.
Okay.
Can I ask a clarifying question? I don't want to cut you off, but we're not talking about this April. So this says April of 2019, April 12th.
No,
is the deadline.
this,
So we're not talking about 2019.
we're talking about next year. We're talking about next April.
April of 2020 would be
At the earliest.
the earliest that we would submit
Correct.
an SOI.
Correct.
Okay.
But
So-
we have to get funding at fall town meeting, correct?
So I don't think so. That was my question, because I think initially we were under the impression we had to go to fall town meeting, but what I'm hearing here is that comes later.
Correct.
So really, all we need to do here is the school committee needs to vote on submitting a statement of interest. The Board of Select needs to vote on submitting a state of
Correct.
interest. That gets submitted in spring of 2020.
Correct.
Based on these numbers, we probably don't get selected in 2020. It could be, there's a
It's-
chance it could happen, but
it's rolling the dice.
You're rolling the dice,
You're talking
right.
about a 5 to 14% acceptance rate.
Right, and Woodland took several years before it finally got accepted
Correct.
into the SOI, right?
Correct.
So we submit it next year. Let's say that the year after that we submit it again, the year after that we submit it again. Let's say we're 3 or 4 years in. Eventually, when we get invited in, then at that point, we have to go to town meeting and we
For
have to
the
request the
feasibility
funding
study
for the
money.
feasibility study.
Correct.
Okay.
That
So this
said,
could be.
we should be aligned with FinCom before we submit an SOI. We all agree with that, right?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
absolutely.
Okay.
But initially, we were talking about the concern that we had to go to town
For
meeting
feasibility money,
just to
I
go
thought.
to just to be able to submit this.
Yep.
But that's not necessarily the case. But I mean, I agree. We need to get the finances all in order
Right.
and make sure that, hey, worst case scenario or best case scenario, we submit the SOI in 2020, gets approved immediately. Can we afford it, right?
Mhm. Right.
So we do need to get at
Right,
that line.
and that's where like and again, I'm shooting for April to have those conversations after we've gotten kind of community feedback, so,
Right.
like, if we go out to the community and we get overwhelming response that like, hey, we don't want a middle school, high school complex, then we're looking at a different project and a different kind of feasibility study.
Right.
Would be an example of, you know, so I wanna get that feedback and then meet with them in April.
So that was my question. When we submit the statement of interest, we have to know whether or not we're doing a renovation or a new build, right?
No.
Oh, we don't.
So one of the questions we can have
Okay.
answered by the feasibility study is,
Okay.
you know, does it make sense? Like, and there's a lot of different options, like, in between, like, so, like, the cleanest option, and I don't mean like this is the best option, but the cleanest option, simplest thing is you knock the whole thing down and you put up a new, like, whether it's like a high school or a complex. Now, it's not as simple as that, because you also have to look like where the student's gonna go during construction, so you may, like we did with Woodley, you may build on the site, you may, you may like, you know, if you, and again, let's go renovation. So if renovation, you might do it by wing, you know, bring in some temporary classroom space. With a complex, one of the things we were thinking is, you know, you build the middle school side, the high school students, you know, live in the middle school side for a year or two, while the high school side gets renovated, and then it kind of goes from there. There's options where, like, you know, we had the swimming team here today, pools aren't part of the, you know, reimbursement process, so, you know, do you keep the pool and maybe the auditorium and build around that? So those are the types of questions that the feasibility study would kind of look at. Because there's nobody that we have employed in the Milford Public Schools. We all have ideas and opinions, but there's nobody who has the expertise to say, hey, is a renovation, a rebuild the right way to go? And so that gets answered in the feasibility process. Part of the feedback is, what's the appetite? Is there an appetite to do a complex? Or is it really just like, are people saying like, you know, generally just no?
Oh, go ahead. Can I just, so as a follow-up, come back to me.
Well, I'll go if you want to.
Yeah, come back to me.
So 2 things. One, I think in addition to the forums that we're holding, I do think it's important to get community feedback, and sometimes we find we hold these forums and we have less than a handful of people. So have we thought about generating any kind of a survey to
We can definitely
the
do that as well.
community?
That's very easy to do.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful, and that way, if we could get that sent out to families and get that sent out around town, we could gauge, you know, some of the key questions in terms of what people's interest is, whether or not we can afford whatever people are interested in. At least it would be nice to know. Second thing, kind of just to follow up on something that you had asked about, Chris, in terms of the timeline of meeting with community and meeting. So having been a person who has sat on a failed building project, and some of the feedback that we had gotten when the project didn't pass was there was a lack of connectivity between what the schools and school committee wanted and what the people in the town wanted. And so I think the earlier we get the word out, and I think no matter how much we do to get the word out, so another good point about the office hours that we're going to talk about in our goals, I think the more we can do to generate information throughout the town is going to be really critical. So I think right now, I think it's okay because we have quite a bit of time to go for the timeline in terms of the first SOI being shared. I think now's the time to get the word out there, so people aren't surprised that, oh my God, either I can't believe they're letting our schools go and they're not doing anything, or we didn't hear anything about this. So I think that'll be helpful, and I'm sure if we hold those office hours, that'll be a topic that will come up in terms of interest that what people are thinking about.
So Kevin, sorry, Laura, go ahead.
I know, I just remembered I was
No,
gonna
go,
say.
say it.
I wrote it down this time. So, so if we know it might take a little bit for the statement of interest, I mean, should we be trying for this year if we think it's gonna take multiple years?
So I don't think there's any way, like, even if we were a couple months ahead, like, just the scope of work for a statement of interest is pretty significant. We'd probably have to do a bidding process just to get like the support we would need to kind of write. And again, it's not like hundreds of $1,000s, but we're probably talking like $5,000 to $15,000 for somebody to help us out with a statement of interest.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. And I haven't even begun to look at model RFPs for that at this point. But I think I don't think you want to rush it, because I think we'd rather, because we've got to finish the long range ed plan. You know, and then you have to write the statement of interest based on that. And that's a pretty involved process, and I wouldn't want to rush that.
And then, as a school committee, should we be touring or looking at, new builds, like their complexes, and then also maybe schools that have been remodeled, so that when, we do have office hours or people ask us questions, we can speak to that?
Yeah, I can definitely arrange that. We've gotten a list of, either full, like, middle high school complexes or
Yeah.
places that have brought, like, maybe a 7th or 8th grade over
Right.
that have been built within the last, like, I think 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, there's some really close by.
Yeah, there's a couple, yeah, there's a
Like
couple.
Uxbridge,
Yep.
they brought the 8th grade and,
Yep. Yeah,
Sutton-
Taunton and.
Sutton's a
yep,
complex.
Yep. And they're
They're
K through 12 complex, right, Kath, in one spot?
Mhm.
Well,
Or is
they
it all
are,
in the
but
same kind of, it's around a circle or something, isn't it?
It is. It
Yeah.
has the core, and it's 6 through 12.
Okay.
And I know Assabet Valley they did a big remodel.
Mhm.
So where they sectioned off like 3 different areas.
Yep.
They did one area, it was a 3-year project, they did one area, the second area, and the third area.
Yeah, no, I think that's
Okay.
that's a great idea.
Okay.
Kim, could you just clarify, when you said, you just responded, we need to finish the long-range plan, I am not clear on what that entails.
So the long-range education facilities
Yeah.
plan, so let me just.
Sorry.
So what the long-range education facilities plan is basically saying, like, this is kind of where we are post-Woodland, this is where we're going. Based on, the information we received from NESDEC and.
Is that the plan that you reviewed with us in October expanded a little bit, or is it a document we don't yet have?
It's a document that I'm gonna be creating
Okay.
in probably May and June, after we kind of complete this meeting series. So we've got all the, kind of the guts of it.
Yep.
Because there's basically like a series of questions, and again, it's right on the MSBA website. I don't want to go through, but like
Sure.
it's, what's the square footage? What's your program plan? Number of teachers, like kind of the planned occupancy, those kinds of things in detail. And then you're saying kind of, this is what we're going to do. Kind of, this is the plan to go first. This is the plan to go second.
Okay.
And you kind of work your way through and kind of a why to it.
Okay. I think when I was thinking timeline, I was thinking more like internal, like our timeline and incorporating all that. So is there a way that you could just put that on paper in terms of, I know the community meetings are scheduled, let's schedule FinCom,
Yeah.
and between now and the SOI,
I'll send that to you.
everything-
Yeah, I'll send that to you
Okay.
like early next week.
Okay.
That's easy.
Yeah, you're looking at April, you said, to meet with.
Yeah, so basically we've got
FinCom
three, so the 3 key dates
Yeah.
initially are the 3 meetings we're doing with the
Set up,
community.
yep.
Yeah.
We'll add like a date, we'll put it like an open survey out there,
Great.
we'll put like a week or so. And then we'll do, a meeting in early April with, FinCom,
It's probably just their
selectmen.
busiest time would be my only
Well,
hesitation.
there's never a
Yeah.
good time though, because like it's just, that's really the issue
Yeah.
with these kind of projects. The end of June for the completion of the long-range education facilities plan, and then, probably over the summer, we'll start to look at like who can we, contract, and I can set some deadlines. They'll be somewhat arbitrary, but they'll be backed up to the open window for next year
Got it.
for the statement of interest.
Okay, so the SOI consultant or bandwidth to do that is within the next year's budget?
Yeah, that's not a tremendous amount, that's not gonna be a tremendous hit for us. And it's probably, and again, I don't have a good sense, the 5 to 15 number was kind of like just,
Sure.
an estimate, but
Yeah.
I think it'll be somewhere in that vicinity.
Okay.
So being a one-time expense, that's something we could potentially pay out of the
Like
school choice
money.
balance.
Yeah, exactly. And then we back up some of the other deadlines with the open period for the SOI next year, if that was the direction we decided to go in.
Okay. I didn't know if you, or maybe you, Kathy, so it references the SOI, sort of your ability to get accepted, talks about this 2016 school survey rating. Do we have any sense of where we fall in that?
I really don't.
Okay, I was just curious.
Yeah, I'm not sure
Okay.
what that is either.
It might be too early to say, but are there certain aspects of Milford High School, like the roof or any of the systems or the scope, that are gonna benefit as far as the timeline and move us
Yes.
up?
Potentially,
too?
yes.
So we need to speak to that when we meet with FinCom,
Yep.
saying,
Do you wanna
listen, based off of our roof, sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
Kathy, you wanna talk about the roof and just how that plays into it?
In one of the MSBA workshops, they specifically spoke to the fact that once you put in an SOI and you have your long-range plan approved, if you're in a district with a school that has a 50-year age factor and what they refer to as a ballast roof, then those schools are moving to the front of the line. And we in fact do have ballast roofs. And we're right around the corner from being 50 years old. So we do have that potential to move up in the queue.
That's a good question. So there's a shot, like, even though we think like it's,
That's why,
like
so
getting accepted to Princeton, we may get accepted to Princeton the first year.
Right, so I
There's
just
that kind of good news,
Good.
bad news kind of situation.
FinCom's gotta know that,
Ex-
yeah, that
exactly.
it's, that the, the bond might be 3 years out, not 5 years out, right,
Right.
based off a roof, cause where are we at capital-wise, the roof is how far out, if we didn't do anything,
We have the roof, I believe, 5 years out.
5 years out, so, at $5 million,
Oh,
5 to
probably,
7.
probably more than that by the
So-
time
Yeah,
5 years
but at
comes
this
around.
point,
Right.
it's,
Yeah.
so,
the economy is improving.
But I guess the problem with going too quickly is then you go to town meeting,
mhm.
and if you don't have the votes at town meeting, then you gotta go back to MSBA and say,
Right.
you didn't have the votes, and then you get just kicked
Right.
down the line.
Well, I think that's where
Right,
we
they
look
don't
at
like that.
FinCom too, but that's a FinCom. They hold the purse strings, they know what this town can afford and can't afford, and I think they do a good job at being able to articulate that to town meeting members. There's certainly will be questions back and forth, and when Woodland was built, we were on our heels because we weren't sure, but it was overwhelmingly voted for.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, when it gets down to it, FinCom does a good job at defending the needs of the school system. We just gotta be able to present to them why we need it and let them, again, kind of, in a sense, find the money for us. So we gotta present to them the educational needs, let them worry about the financial needs.
And there's it's very tense when you go through this process because like every vote, like even if you think it's looking very positive,
Right.
it's
Right, you don't know, but I'm just
Yeah.
saying, we
Yeah.
gotta, that's FinCom's job, is to, to make the townspeople feel secure with the funding, so.
But that's why I feel like, Kevin, the more we can circulate it and,
Yep.
have these discussions, because I
Right.
think, the headline in the MDN the more people are aware before they start hearing about
Yep.
it, the better the reception will be.
Yep.
And I feel like Josh has so much powerful data and thoughts in terms of the plan for how we want to teach students, that the more we could share some of that information with the population that might already be, certainly parents that have high school students are on board with that, but there's probably a large percentage of the community that isn't. And I
Right.
think the more we could circulate some of that, it would be really helpful.
Good? Open meeting law complaint.
Yeah, so I just want to update the committee really quickly, as we had a open meeting law complaint based on, 1 second. It was a subcommittee meeting on January 15th, and basically what it comes down to is there was an oversight in a posting. And there's a process that we're engaged in right now to address the complaint, which the Attorney General's office is involved in, and our town attorney is involved in as well. So we're moving through that process right now. I know that on the town side and our side, we're looking at some redundancies to make sure that we don't in the future have these kinds of issues arise. Unfortunately, we work in a human business, and human error is going to occur from time to time. I think we have a very good track record of posting meetings. A few years ago, we were going back and forth on, around the joint meetings we have with the finance committee, who should post, do both groups post, and I think we've clarified those issues. Everything else is pretty straightforward. The goal really is to kind of just get the meetings out there on a regular basis, and I think we try to do that, and I think we do that in good faith. This was just an issue where there was an oversight occurred and the meeting wasn't posted. And typically what we do, if we see that, if we miss one, we just cancel the meeting and reschedule it. In this case, we didn't realize that. We moved forward, and we're in the process of kind of addressing the complaint.
Where are we at in the process? I know
There's kind of some letters going back and forth. I've got to touch base with Charles Body, I think either tomorrow or early next week, depending on when we can connect together to see where we're at in the process.
We're within our timelines.
I believe so.
Should make sure. Just as I know that obviously the complaint, the person that's making the complaint certainly knows, is very well aware of the timeline, so I just wanna make sure that our committee is also aware of the timelines, and that we just don't, we don't make a mountain out of a molehill. Obviously, we made a human mistake, made an error, so let's correct it and move forward.
And that's the goal.
Certainly, but within the right timeline.
Absolutely.
think with the attorneys on it, we should be all set, right?
Yeah.
Town council and stuff, yeah. All right, next on the agenda, report of the assistant superintendent.
Thanks, sir. I just want to update the committee on our work with the Massachusetts Consortium for Innovative Education Assessment. It's a mouthful, MCIEA. It was about a year ago that we joined up with the consortium, and our teachers started working with them about in the summer. But just a quick review of what MCIEA is. There's 7 different districts. We're in the process of recruiting new districts, but 7 different districts. It's us, Attleboro, Revere, Lowell, Boston, Winchester, and Somerville. MCIEA was founded because district and teacher leaders wanted an alternative way than the current system that, as we know, ineffectively tries to capture the complexity of school and student learning in one single high-stakes test. The goal of MCIEA is to build a new model that reflects a full measure of schools and prepares students with skills, knowledge, and mindset to achieve the goals. The model is founded upon multiple measures of student engagement, student achievement, school environment, with teacher-generated performance assessments as the primary measure of student learning. The MCIEA is in the 3rd year of piloting, like I said before, where this is our first year with the consortium. But some of the activities that we've participated in include teacher professional development, designing performance assessments. We have, in the spring, we hope to do some of the school quality data collection and do some of that sharing too. But they have also done some community engagement and advocacy as well. So how is Milford involved? Well, at the beginning of this year, we had a team of teachers from Stacy, about 5 teachers from Stacy, 5 teachers at the high school, joined a cohort of cross-district members, so a cohort from all the different 7 different districts in year-long PD. So what happens is 3 or 4 times they have a coach that they're working with from the Center of Collaborative Education who works directly with MCIEA. Coach comes out, is working directly with those 5 teachers on how to create these performance assessments. They have a set of protocols that they use as they're building the performance assessments. Our team at Stacy has, I believe it's all 5. All 5 have created their performance assessment and have given their performance assessments, and now are working with each other to get feedback on how students did, that sort of thing. And then we'll be working with the coach soon. Our high school team will be giving performance assessments in the upcoming month or so. So Stacy was a little bit ahead of the game. So that's one part of how we're involved. Now, we were just recently, Kevin and I were both recently at the superintendent's conference, the annual mid-year conference, and MCIEA was mentioned among some of the other innovative ways that school districts are trying to come together and rethink just assessments and accountability. So we're gaining some impact, and we are gaining some momentum, and we are having an impact at the state level, which is great. And what that means is we're trying to, like I said, recruit more districts. There is a specific line in the governor's budget for MCIEA. And then there's members of our governing board that are working directly with the commissioner and his team. And part of the work that we're doing now with the commissioner is there's several pilots in our consortium. We're piloting cross-district performance assessment in 4th grade math, 7th grade science, and 10th grade ELA. Our district is participating in the 7th grade science, all 3 teachers. All 3 teachers were part of a group of teachers that created this performance assessment. They went through all the protocols, and they will be now giving the performance assessment to their 7th grade science classes. They'll all be scoring it, and then they'll all come back together with a set of exemplars, just to do some double-blind scoring to make sure that everybody's scoring it the same way. And then also we had 3 fourth grade teachers that participated in designing the performance assessment, but all 4th grade teachers will be participating in giving the assessment. And that'll be later on, closer to May, I think, is when we plan on doing that. So they're all gonna use the common assessment, and they're also all gonna use a common rubric. And then they'll bring those exemplars back to the full group and see how they scored. Because that's one of the biggest things. When you're using performance assessments, we try to calibrate it so that all teachers are scoring the same way. So there has to be things put in place to make sure that teachers are scoring it the same way. All right, and then finally, this is kind of more recent. The federal government has been kind of pushing on our state, because there's 83 schools in the Commonwealth that don't have an accountability system. We happen to have 2 of them, 2 of the 83. They're the K2 schools, or schools that don't have any 3rd, 4th, any MCAS, anything that's tied to MCAS. So basically K2 schools. So we have 2 of them. So the Commonwealth is looking for a way to appease kind of the federal government and what they need to have for an accountability system, and they're looking to MCIA as potentially using this kind of system that we're developing as a way of doing that. So right now we're working with the K2 schools and trying to create this pilot with them. We're looking to recruit maybe 5 to 10 teachers at both of the schools to work with a team from Attleboro and create some performance assessments to administer to the students. And part of the accountability system would be students would take these performance assessments, then there would also be this data dashboard, and it would be able to report out on how Brookside Memorial are doing on a whole bunch of different measures. Student learning would be one. We wouldn't look at the performance assessments as a way of saying all kids are proficient. We would look at the performance assessments as a way of showing that kids are making progress. So kids would take it 2 or 3 times during the year, and teachers would be able to show, based on these performance assessments, that kids, 1st graders, 2nd graders, are showing progress towards proficiency. Because I don't think there is any kind of assessment that could say a 1st grader is proficient in such and such skills of 2nd grade. So that's what we're looking to do with them. At the same time, I think it's important that we become part of this, because what I don't want to see is like an MCAS assessment have to be given to a 1st grader or a 2nd grader. So that's why I think it's important that we do this. So a lot's to come, I think, on that front, and I think I don't know. I think it's exciting times, and I think we have some traction at the state level, and it are making some headway. So I don't know if anybody has
If I can add 2 things to that. One is, I think we've had tremendous kind of enthusiasm, cooperation, and support from the Milford Teachers Association. And one of the great things about MCIA, and Craig has mentioned this before, is that part of the signing on process is the union and the superintendent both have to sign on, so that people are all on the same page. And it's these are more ongoing conversations, but I give Craig a lot of credit for a lot of the work he's done with teachers and principals and Nick and Sherry across the district, because I think these practices are going to improve educational practices and outcomes across the district.
Anybody got any questions? Chris?
Craig, when do you expect the development and getting the administration of the actual assessments? Is that this coming year, or are we?
Well, we are piloting some. I guess it's going to be an ongoing thing. So if it ever comes to fruition that we are able to create this new system and get a federal waiver, right? I would look at performance assessments as being given 2 to 3 to potentially 4 times a year. Sometime in the fall, winter.
It's not a
spring.
replacement of MCAS, but it's again kind of like
Well,
what
it
we
could
looked
be.
at for iReady. Okay,
It could be.
All right.
And I guess what we're trying to do is show that this accountability system could replace MCAS, but I think there still would have to be some like dipstick years.
I think
like
it's 3, 8, and 10 maybe.
some or 4 to 8 and 10 or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you'd still be part of that kind of process.
Yeah. Now the results more. I guess when are the results given, or when do you
So they
obtain
were-
those results? Are they instantaneous, or is it more like,
Yes,
like
for
MCAS
teachers.
where
No,
you
and
know,
that's
months
part,
down the road? Yeah.
I'm glad you said that because that's what I think is part of the value of this system. So when teachers get MCAS results, right? Teachers get the MCAS results maybe in the summer, usually in the fall, and it's based on the kids that they had last year. So they may make adjustments to practice, but they're making adjustments to practice based on the kids that they had last year, right?
Right.
Where if you give these performance assessments, first of all, the teachers created them or had a hand in creating them. Then they're correcting them and scoring them, and then they can adjust practice right there so that they can get the kids prepared for the next performance assessment.
Okay.
And then they can give the kids actual feedback on the performance assessment that they just took.
So that performance assessment created by the is it created by the teacher based on the Milford curriculum, or is this based on state curriculum, and which can Milford's assessments be compared to Attleboro's assessments and try to understand?
That's part of the
maybe
work
what
that we're doing.
deficiencies
So
between the two towns.
All of these assessments are going to go through this vetting process, and then we're going to hopefully have this test bank of all these assessments that went through this vetting process. So then teachers would be able to choose, I'm going to use this assessment. It went through this vetting process. They pull it off of whatever this bank is, and then they use the assessment. So,
Okay.
like I said, the hardest part is like calibrating the scoring. So to make sure that you have a group of 4th graders, you have a group of 4th graders, I have a group of 4th graders, and that what I see as proficient or exceeding expectations is the same as what you see and is the same as what you see. So that's part of the process and part of the coaching too.
Yes. Thank you, Craig.
All right.
Thank you.
Awesome. Next on the agenda is KP.
I have for the committee's approval this evening 8 warrants in the amount of $977,617.40.
Need a motion to approve that. Motion by Megan, second by Jen. All in favor?
I also have the latest budget update, as you can see through the financials, that again, the deficits that we have to watch is the out-of-district line as well as transportation, which clearly correlate. There is an additional budget update that we're reviewing right now, which came out from the Associate Commissioner of Education, Jay Sullivan, who has sent out a very important advisory that there's been a decision around circuit breaker revenue, that if you have any student in an out-of-district program that is not approved under the Operational Services Division, it will not be eligible for circuit breaker revenue. So I met with the special ed office, and I have Lucy and Vicky looking through all of our out-of-district students to verify that they are all in an approved program. For instance, if we had a student at $140,000 program, that would be a loss of $75,000 for next year's budget. There is a way around it. If we are aware of it now, we can request for that individual's IEP be approved as an approved program for that individual, and then he or she would be eligible for circuit breaker. So that would have an impact for FY20, so we're watching that very clearly. I do have a personnel update for the committee. No vote is required. There are 2 out-of-state field trips, one being out-of-state, one being international travel. The first is for Mr. Johnson's Building and Trade classroom to attend a New England industry event in Providence, Rhode Island. And that is being held, I apologize, I gotta go all the way down.
March 29th.
Thank you, Laura. March 28th, it is out of state,
29th.
therefore it does require a vote. Ooh, 29th, I'm sorry, March 29th.
Can I get a motion to approve?
Yeah, and just quickly before, Kathy, can we just make sure that when, for these out-of-state approvals, just a quick paragraph maybe from the teacher, just on what the educational value is? I know we've done that with some of them in the past. I just think it's in the best interest just for the committee, and that way we can read through the educational value of these trips.
Agreed.
I know that there is, it's just for the record of it.
Absolutely.
So, with that, I will motion.
They'll complete the new field trip request form, which includes that, correct?
Do they have the new form?
No, they would going
They
forward,
would,
right?
yes,
Once it's
that's
Thank you.
true,
Yeah,
that's
which I
right,
should
Meg.
know that.
Excellent, no problem.
Motion by
Motion,
Chris,
yes.
seconded by
That's
Jim.
fantastic
All in
customer
favor?
service
There you
right
go.
there.
Joe, may I ask
The
a
second,
question?
I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry, finish that, Kathy, I'm sorry.
The second trip is for international travel for 10th through 12th grade 23 students to travel April vacation week, beginning April 12th, or I apologize, right, April 12th through the 19th. There are 2 adults attending for the 23 students. It is at a cost per student at $2,899.
That's gonna be a fun trip. Can I get a motion to approve this trip with these guys? Motion by Jen, seconded by Jim. All in favor? It's good, it's nice there that time of year, right?
I hope so.
I don't know if there's a bad time in Portugal, too.
Ask a quick question, John.
Alright, and that's what you've got for me, Kathy.
1 minute.
Oh, I'm sorry, Megan. Jim.
Can I ask a quick question? The ratio, what was the total trip count, the total head count on that,
23 students,
with only 2 chaperones?
2 chaperones.
Is that, so do we have a ratio breakout on that?
Not to my knowledge.
I can check that for you, Jim. I think there
Because
might
I
be
mean,
some,
I've
there might have been
never-
some language about that.
Well, I mean, I've never brought that up before, but that seems a little low for 23 kids. Is there any way we can, 23 high school kids in Portugal with 2 chaperones? I mean, I'm not saying,
Are you volunteering to go? Is that what you're
Yeah, I
saying?
mean, why not? Just asking the question.
No, that's a good question.
I'll look into that, Jim, and get back to you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Meg, we don't have anything in that field
I
trip
was just
policy,
looking
right?
at that right now.
About ratios?
Uh,
I know
it-
we have for nursing,
And it,
Well, I know the nurse.
right, for nursing ratios, I don't think
Mike,
we've
you
ever.
watching? Nursing. He's probably watching.
no.
Yeah, it's cool. I mean, I'm not calling for a policy revision. I'm just asking if there's any way we could scrape up 1 or 2 more people for the trip. Be great. Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Kathy, may I just ask you 2 questions on the budget info you provided?
Sure.
So there were 2 grants that we haven't touched it this year. I was just curious whether or not you think we'll be utilizing those. One was related to the hurricane, and that may or may not.
Yes, I've been looking at that, and really the expenses should follow the nature of the grant.
Okay.
So I would like to do a transfer of expenses more towards April or May.
Okay.
And then free up funds through the local budget.
Okay, and then the same for the early literacy, just that we hadn't used that yet. I was surprised.
Would you like to speak to that?
Well, most of that money's stipends and won't be paid out to the end of the year.
Got it. Okay.
So
I was
they're
just
doing the
to make
work.
sure. Yep.
We're not gonna pay the stipends out to the
Okay.
end of the year.
Excellent. And then just one item, Kathy, I was hoping to get some more information on. You could just follow up later. When I compared the instructional material expense, Brookside versus Memorial, Brookside was significantly higher, and that surprised me, given.
I could speak to that
Okay.
now if you'd like. So essentially, when the principals begin their budget process, they have X number of dollars that each one of the buildings have overall for discretionary funds. So it's within the principal's ability to take some material money that they may not need for next year and move that to something like building technology.
Excellent.
So you might see a differential in between materials, and it's based on how the principals would like to utilize those funds.
Great, but if I was looking at in totality, it would be much more in line. Excellent.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure because I know year over year, you know, incrementally it would be based on that number, so I just wanted to make sure.
And then it might shift again back to materials if, say, reading needed to adjust for curriculum materials.
Great, thank you.
Feel something?
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? All right, before we do end with that, I do have a couple of gifts I'd like to read out. I'll read them all off and then we'll vote them all in at the end. The first one we have here is from Great West Life Annuity Insurance for the Milford High School alumni in the amount of $2,000. A matching donation on behalf of Joe Marias. Thank you. Brookside School PTO in the amount of $2,845.36. Proposed gift. It Takes a Village Fund. Did I say that right? It Takes a Village Fund. Yes. The next one is Alliance Energy. Name of the gift is just for the Milford High School in the amount of $500. And next one is from Ja S. Lim Foundation in the amount of $3,000 for the math and science prizes. Very generous people that are donating for this. Can I get a motion to accept these gifts? Motion by Chris, seconded by Jim. All in favor? Thank you. Next on the agenda is subcommittee updates. Do we have one for health and safety?
Enthusiastically,
Yeah.
Laura.
Okay, so I did write a few things down for the committees that I participated in, or the meetings I participated in related to these committees. So the Health and Safety Committee met on Thursday, February 7th, after school. It was noted that a few of the teachers at Memorial and Stacy wanted their temperatures checked in their rooms, so that was noted during the meeting. Also, it was noted that a full cleaning using the Protexis machine was being completed during the first week of February according to the schedule, and this is typically done during the winter season as needed. The next health and safety meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 4th at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Can I throw one more thing into that?
Mm-hmm.
The two teachers who are on the committee they actually compile notes and share them out with the full faculty. So it's a pretty transparent process, and I think it's going pretty well.
Thank you, Laura. Climate, culture, and morale.
Okay, so we met just this week on Tuesday, February 26th, after school. Overall, the teachers noted that at most buildings morale was lower than normal. The district has recognized this and is planning a wellness week for teachers next week, which includes mindfulness activities. Teachers would also like to see more supports in their work with students who demonstrate behavioral or emotional challenges. But Memorial has started the Positive Behavior, the HOP program that Brookside is also doing this year. And Stacy has also worked to reestablish the 4 Ps as their positive incentive program. And these were to mitigate behavior issues and help to hopefully improve culture as well. A lack of substitute teachers was noted as a concern by teachers. And the district indicated that this was a problem across a lot of other districts in the state and something that they know of that they're working on. And the next climate and culture and morale meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, April 23rd at 2:30 in this room.
Thank you. Budget? Did we have one?
We did not.
So we can't. It's going to be next week. I think next Tuesday.
So the budget subcommittee met on Monday night, so maybe just quickly,
Right.
as a group, I think we're moving forward with discussions with FinCom, so
Yeah,
that'll be next week. But
So
I
that
think-
mean we had was just to get us in line on what we were all
Exactly.
agreeing on and what we were gonna bring forth towards the FinCom.
You have the
Does that make
update.
sense?
Yes.
Thank you. Policy.
Go ahead.
So that group met this evening. Joe, we did 2 first reads, the indirect cost allocation policy as well as the turf field usage. So we'll be, I think, coming back pretty quickly with the indirect cost allocation one. That's just sort of something we're mandated to have, and Kathy has worked through that with the finance director, so everyone's on the same page with that. And then the turf field usage, we're going to do a little bit more follow-up, and then we'll circulate that back to the committee. We also reviewed the school committee operational goals tonight, and so the plan would be to bring that to the committee at its next meeting for approval. Based upon the working session that the group had, just kind of put those on paper, and would like to get those implemented for the current year because they do reflect goals we'd like to complete kind of between the now and the close of the school year.
So we'll try to get that in our next meeting.
Exactly. So I'll actually send those to everyone tonight, so you have ample time to read them and comment, and then we could move them
Is that what
forward
you
next
sent
week.
us before?
I
that you
sent
sent me
it
that
to
you and
yourself
Laura?
and Jen,
Okay.
but I'll circulate it to the entire committee now that the subcommittee has had a chance to review it.
Thank you. And school liaison updates, I don't know if any of you guys had any updates, we were all just
one.
there.
Yeah, actually,
Yes.
met last night, attended last night's school council meeting at Woodland. They're working on their school improvement plan, so certainly had some interesting items that were presented by faculty and by parents. So they're diligently working on that, and then they asked a little bit about budget, so I was able to talk to a little bit about that and the initiatives of what's moving forward. So all in all, just a nice to see a good, hard-working group of parents and staff.
Thank you, Chris. Does anybody have any future agenda items they want to bring up?
I've got Chris's from earlier in the high
Yeah,
school
okay,
classes,
just gonna
so I
mention
made a
that.
note of
Yep.
that.
Perfect, thank you.
And old business, Mr. Consiglio.
I'm not sure if this is old business or future agenda.
Will you raise your hands?
I didn't know
You're in.
I'm holding my breath right now, 'cause I'm not sure what's coming.
PowerPoint.
So school start time committee, we met last night, and they would like to come to the committee with a recommendation. So I don't think we're ready for next week, but sometime in the next month.
Okay.
So
I'll work with you guys to get that on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm not
Either
sure
the
where
first
you
meeting,
want
first
that,
meeting in the
old
world,
business
second
or
meeting.
Take a look at it and see what
Yep.
we can rank
Yep.
them up. Thank you.
I was just wondering if there's any follow-up for Stacy Middle School in the specials being included as part of the progress report. That was something that was brought up at the
Yeah, so
last meeting.
we'll add that, I think, as an agenda item as well.
Okay.
I think probably, again, I've got to look at what we've got on the table, but either for the next meeting in March or the first one in April.
Okay.
Kevin, if I could just insert a preference, I know that the report cards actually go out March 21st, so if we
Mhm.
could just address it in advance of that, I think it would be great to be proactive. To the extent it's going to impact.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's soon.
Sorry.
Yeah, I don't know if there's going to be a lot of movement in terms of
Yeah.
change, but I
Okay.
think there's some things I think they're going to put in place that
Just in advance of that, if we
potentially.
could
Yeah.
communicate the
Yep.
plan.
And that's it? Nothing else? All right. Can I get a motion? Oh, I'm sorry, before we go, I forgot to mention this in the announcements and correspondence. The Milford Youth Center is having their 9th annual St. Patrick's Day fundraiser on Friday, March 29th. It is going to be held this year at Craft Roots Brewery, which is located 4 Industrial Road in Milford, and the time is 7 to 11. And all proceeds do go to physical fitness and educational programs for the center. I've been to a few of these, and they are good. It is a good time. So don't forget that. And can I get a motion to adjourn? Motion by Jim, seconded by Chris. All in favor? Thank you.